like from the very beginning. From the top. And we'll look this way. From the top. Welcome to Become Family. This is a podcast aimed at restoring confidence in marriage and family life. We are your hosts, Renzo and Monica Ortega. And look, we're professional with new lighting and a new camera angle and multiple camera angles. Look at that. This is clearly not
But peak. I still want to keep looking there.
So we're going to try. We probably will for the majority of this. I'm going to work so hard. Look, they're all watching. All of them. No, most of you are listening. So for those of you that are listening, thank you for showing up consistently and listening to the podcast. It must be easier maybe to laugh at the jokes when it's just audio. Like you're more committed. So I feel like when I watch things on YouTube, I'm like, turn it on. I'm doing other things.
Okay. Yeah. So they're focused, you mean?
Like when you're in audio, like you're listening.
That's the only stimuli.
So you're like straight, like I'm ready to commit to whatever Renzo has to say.
I hope so. I've shared this before. I'm a podcast phony. I don't.
This is.
But is phony spelled PH or P or with an F?
You're a teacher, math teacher. I'm pretty sure it's phony. Like phone? No, I'm being serious.
I know it's phony. I just don't know how it's spelled.
No, the word like phone.
I know. I knew the possibility of PH, but I wonder if phony is spelled with an F. I don't know. But I don't listen to podcasts because I cannot hyper-focus just on listening to a podcast. I feel like I have too many other things
right. It's
to
not
think
hyper-focus. You just like kind of focus. Enough focus. And then when Renzo says something intriguing, you're like, oh, I'm going to write that down.
You giggle a little bit.
I got somebody texted us about me wanting to be Ryan Gosling. Yes. So those are the things that people take back from the podcast. Nothing deep and theological.
Nothing else but a more intimate idea of who Renzo is.
Who he recognizes he is not. Speaking of our identities, though, look
at this segue.
Look at I planned it.
The whole take one did not go well, so this was great.
This is the only take. Don't give. We everything is one take. We never edit. I always look like this.
That's mostly.
I do actually. You know what I've considered?
No.
One of the worrisome things about putting this on YouTube is now that you will soon realize that I have like 3 rotations of shirts. And she's laughing because it's true. Like 3 shirts, and I'm like, yeah, I feel comfortable wearing this. Yes. So this is the maroon. This is the maroon.
Henley.
Henley. Let's call that a Lenny. Not a Lenny. This is the maroon Henley. You're gonna get that. You're gonna get the striped shirt, the striped white shirt, and then I have like one more that the green. I like the green one.
You like the green one, and then United Tea will show up a lot. The black United Tea.
Yes. So that's the rotation of shirts. If you want to support Renzo's effort of having more clothes, patreon.com/tobecomefamily. You tell me what you want me to buy with that money, and I will do it. You tell me what you want me to wear, I will absolutely do it because I don't know how to dress myself.
Yeah, that's true. I dress you a lot.
Wow. But so today we are talking about identities, particularly going into the time of Lent, and also because I feel very lost.
Do you not know who you are?
No. So no, not less, more serious, less jokey. But like we just finished a youth group meeting, and it was a rough one. It's just hard because like I feel less effective. I don't know about less effective. I feel less effective than I used to be and we used to be in like bringing people in and just that's something to bring to prayer and just still consider what God's will is, but I feel as though it's important that we never define ourselves by what we're doing.
Sure.
Right. So like I'm not Renzo
the youth minister.
Like that's a thing I do, but like I have my own identity within myself, and I think that clarity or having that provides clarity in being able to navigate like what's God's will for us. Is it like let's do new things, let's try new things, or is it maybe like okay, now let's start like you should start considering like maybe it's time to step down, like things like that need to be brought to prayer
without it being a like reflection on who you are and your worth, right? Because nights like tonight can test you on that because you wonder. It makes you wonder. So it's like you understand where a lot of these identity questions and crises and not knowing where you fit in and how what your worth is and where you belong nights like tonight remind me of where those kind of can come from.
Yeah.
Because tough stuff happens and it makes you wonder, it makes you question. And if your identity is not rooted in something that is unchanging, you can feel uncomfortable.
That like it doesn't, yeah, it's unchanging because the worth or value of who you are doesn't come from you. Because
and what you do, what you bring.
Yeah, like to elaborate without elaborating too much, because like we don't want to share too much details, but like and this goes for I guess anything, like doing this YouTube video audio blog podcast, or like writing the book for Ave Maria, which we did, and we announced we're writing a book with Ave Maria Press.
Yes.
But like, or we're going to be flying to EWTN Tuesday. We'll be in the air while you're listening to this. Yeah, if you're a committed listener, if not, and we're already landed, thanks for nothing, because you could have been praying. But like any of those things that we're doing, it's really easy and tempting to be like, oh, look, this gives me more worth because we're doing something that takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of courage, whatever. And we can be like, oh, look how great we are. But then you're never open to discern, like, is this what God's calling you to do? Because you feel like you need this. And then
that's what fills you, and that's what gives you, that's what gives you your meaning. That's what helps you know who you are. And really, those things, they don't matter. Like, they don't matter to who you are. Like, what your identity is, who you are as a person, and who you are to the world and to the Lord. But man, it can be so tempting though, because that's what's right in front of you, right? These jobs that you have and these tasks that you're doing, or the failures that you are facing, the struggles, the sufferings, they're all right in front of you.
How does that, and I wonder how much of it is cultural. Like I feel as though in our American culture, like we tend to like, we want to live out the American dream. We want to strive for a lot. And there's a tendency to define yourself by that striving. Like, how hard are you working? Are you grinding? Are you taking days off? Are you going on vacation? Like, there's, and then pendulum swings or whatever. But for you as a person who was a teacher, who got her master's in education and is now a stay-at-home mom, like, has that ever been a struggle?
Yeah, it definitely was a struggle.
Well, tell me more.
I was planning on it.
I don't know. I don't know if you're just like...
It was definitely a struggle when I first made the shift from one to the other. And then also,
you did the shift twice.
I did do the shift twice. So after our first son was born, I became a stay-at-home mom and worked part-time. And then I went back to work. Well, it's kind of like part-time, full-time. I was a long-term sub for a couple months before Gianna. And then I went back full-time after Gianna was born for a few years. And then now I'm home again. There was so much like restlessness and uneasiness in the first, like at the beginning, when I first shifted to being a stay-at-home mom. I just didn't feel comfortable in my roles. I felt like I was capable of doing more. I should be doing more. I was discontent. And even just like, I felt like there were definitely times where I felt like I lost myself because I didn't know who I was, and I didn't feel like I belonged here. I didn't know where I belong, if I belonged there. I'm feeling like I'm saying a lot of vague things. I'm not articulating really like the depth of how uncomfortable and restless I was, but I just felt like Don't
worry, this is why you have me.
Okay.
Can you tell us more? So that's a prompt.
I'm trying to tell you more.
Oh, I thought you needed a prompt.
No.
Give you a good one.
That doesn't
All right, so
help me here.
I love your face so much. No, all right. Honest prompt though. And so in terms of the identities, did you feel like you were doing a good job as a mother?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go on.
Identities. We didn't get to that part yet though.
Well, I guess you were saying you were vague. I was trying to give you like a specific, because like I think the reason it's vague is because there's so many different aspects to it that you felt restless. So like it's easier to just say I felt restless and then be like, well, as a mother I felt like I was doing this, and as a wife I was doing this, and as a daughter, like there's all these different.
Sure.
And I think actually a lot of us struggle with that, of feeling like I'm I'm uneasy and I don't know why, and we might even be able to articulate it's because of the identities. Like I'm struggling within my identity as a son, as a husband, as a father. But when we take a step back and realize like there's many facets of my life that I'm not doing well in, and this is why I have this restlessness.
Yeah. So in particular, my identity as a mother, right? I was a young mom, new mom, had little babies. So one of the struggles was you're doing so much work and putting in so much effort and you're seeing nothing come of it because they're so little. So they can't produce, they can't show that like the effort that you've been putting in does anything. And I wasn't seeing our connection and our building of a relationship as a success. Like I didn't see that as something to measure because it wasn't measurable, right? And our second son was colicky and cried a lot for 6 months. So even that, I felt like I was never satisfying him or meeting his needs or giving him what he needed and deserved. So I must be failing as a mom. And I remember so much. There's a phrase that I heard from a lot of people that I definitely bought into was, I'm a better mom for working. Like when I'm a working mom, I'm a better mom. I come home and I'm a better mom. And I definitely felt that way when I did that long-term sub. There was this restlessness and this position came up and we figured out how to make it work that we could both be working. And I took that sub position to kind of test out, could we do this? Should we be a dual working home? And how would that work? And I felt so successful at school. Like I felt like I was doing a good job. And not that I was a outstanding teacher or whatever, but I was able to quantitatively see the effect I was having. Right. And I was getting immediate feedback. And even if it was negative, I was able to adjust and things like that. So, and I felt that I did a better job coming home as a mom because I came home confident. Right. So I came home confident. I came home productive. So I felt as if I was a better mom. And because I wasn't doing it 24/7, I felt as if I could give better attention to the kids because this wasn't monotonous and all day long. It was kind of a novelty.
I also wonder if there's less fails.
Right? Less fails because you're less like, they go to bed soon, so and this is not to knock working parents, but that phrase of, I guess I want to harp on that phrase of, I'm a better mom when I'm a working mom. And I want to make sure that is identified as that was not a good way to assess my identity and assess my motherhood because of a job.
Yeah.
Right. That was a disordered way of looking at things.
What about anything in terms of the identities as wife?
So do you want to like list the identities? Because I feel like you're jumping in without...
That's probably a really good way of going
I feel like you're jumping into the conversation. We jumped right halfway.
The conversation's been going.
Okay. Well, I've been talking a lot, so you haven't said anything.
So, well, I guess it's not really hard. Like the identities that we kind of... So, well, I guess we could structure it a little bit better. But I think it's important to identify the identities that we live in because all of them require a relationship. And like we talked about with JP2 and Theology of Body, like our bodies are imprinted the need for relationship, and because our souls also require a relationship, we were created a relationship by God for relationship. Yep. And the identities are important because like if I am a son, that immediately puts me in a relationship with a father, right? So I'm in that relationship. If I'm a husband, there's a relationship with my spouse. If I'm a father, I have sons and daughters. Yeah. So like there's every identity or masculine identity for myself corresponds with a relationship in some way. So if we don't get those right, we end up unable to relate well to the people closest to us, and then ultimately unable to relate to God the Father himself. So for husbands, there is... So for men, there is son, father, husband, brother. Ooh, that's another one. Yeah. And then for women, there are...
daughter, sister, bride, mother.
Yeah.
I went more in like age order.
That makes sense. So then mine would be son, brother,
husband,
father.
That's
okay.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then I know that, like, and we talked about in other episodes, the time as a stay-at-home dad and how that, because like while you were at working mom, because we always decided we wanted one parent home. So while you were a working mom, I stayed home with the kids. And that was a very formative time for me. A lot of healing happened. A lot of reading happened. But even in this idea of identity, like there was a lot of healing that happened there too, because in terms of my masculinity in general, like I had to like, what does it mean to be a man? Now suddenly I'm home changing diapers, unable to find clothes for the kids, and then like indoor patients. Like there's just a lot of, and that's why I said about like there's less wins or there's more fails, because like I was home with them all the time and there was constant
apparently nakedness, but
yes, from me and the kids. Like it was all terrible, and there was not like I felt uneasy at home.
Yeah.
And again, it wasn't just because like this is not a job a guy should be doing. Like that's not why I felt uneasy, but because I was out of like work up to that point, and the things I was doing up to that point allowed me to mask a lot of the wounds that I had. So like a lot of the wounds surrounding my identity. I've shared in other episodes how I've always, or actually I don't know if I've shared in any of our episodes, but probably when we've been interviewed, but like I have not been often told, like my dad has not, growing up, my dad didn't tell me he was proud of me a lot, ever. It's okay. Dad, I have a podcast. My wounds are showing. No, but like, or like have said he's proud of me in a way that like was not just because of like I achieved something through sports or like if I won the championship, it'd be like, oh, that's great, you won it, but like how many rebounds did you get? You know, like, oh, how many turnovers did you get? Like there was always like a thing like I'm proud of you, but and so like I grew up with that wound of like needing to always measure up in some way. And so like I remember prior to me becoming a stay-at-home dad, like there was like youth ministry was a big deal. Like, oh look, oh maybe I'll be a Steubenville speaker one day. Like that was a thing in my head. Like wanting to like find a way to earn my way through, to measure up, to show like, look, I'm successful. Like, look, I'm worth being proud of. And same in my career. Like I was a social worker at the time, but I had my eye on like maybe I'll be an administrator and be able to run the nursing homes, and I can make 6 figures. And like there was like, oh, you know, I earned a certain amount. Like I can, if I do these things well, like I'll be able to fill that hole that feels like I'm unworthy. And then suddenly I'm a stay-at-home dad, and like I have to like people now know I'm a stay-at-home dad, and there's this like, why are you doing that? You're a guy. And like then suddenly like that's not something somebody's gonna say they're proud of me for. That's right. And then having to wrestle with like, does God still love me as his son in this position? What does it mean to be a beloved son? How can I be a good father to these kids that I'm with now? Like, so there's a lot of wrestling through the identities that way.
Yeah.
Just because like I was kind of unable to, like, I didn't have my trajectory anymore that I had in my head.
Yeah.
Of like being a speaker, being able to earn a lot of money. I was earning nothing. And then you still had to do the laundry when you came home because I couldn't figure that out. So like there was a lot of that too. So like I remember that being a time of like a lot of inner turmoil of like, what am I supposed to be doing?
Yeah. Well, and it's amazing that the sacrament of marriage and then as a byproduct becoming parents challenges you in that way, right? It presents this opportunity to be restless, to be uncomfortable, to have some anxiety, and to really start to look at what has brought me here.
Yeah.
Because, wow, okay, big light bulb.
Well, no, because sorry, I wanted to say this before and I forgot, but also because it wasn't just like how am I a dad or how am I perceived as a husband and father from the outside. Like we used to fight a lot.
Yes.
And I would also like, so then I'd go to bed at the end of the night feeling like a failure as a husband as well.
Yeah.
And like, and then there's also like, well, and now she's going to leave me because like, what is it in me that's worth staying for? Like there was a lot of that too, of like, she's upset at me for all these things. Like because we were like in other episodes you could listen to, like we were struggling with different aspects of intimacy and how to love each other well. And, you know, I was not the best husband and father I could be. I was very passive. So like there's a lot of things I needed to fix, but I remember we would just fight so much that I felt like even as a husband I was failing. And then like if I'm failing as a husband, I also felt like I was failing as a father because I'm not being the kind of husband, or I was not being a good husband to my kid's mother.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's also like that aspect too. So like there was a lot of heaviness during that time.
Yeah. And I think that that's the invitation that comes through the sacrament. We've talked to Dr. Bruninger about how the sacrament can maybe be also renamed as a sacrament of healing or labeled as a sacrament of healing because it brings up these things in us that haven't been healed yet, that they haven't been worked on, these wounds that we carry, either self-inflicted, inflicted by others, inflicted by just circumstance. But there was something in for both of us in this early time in our marriage and in this early time of our parenthood that we were uncomfortable in our identities. Mm-hmm. And it was calling us to either ignore them and push them down, which was for me going to work, like was my escape from that. Like I wanted to run away from, there were actually times I wanted to run away from our family, from our home, from my motherhood, from being a wife, because it was so hard. It was so hard. And the thing that made it so hard was my lack of confidence and my lack of peace and I kept trying to do it better and to have it be better. And what is the missing piece that will make this all be fine? So we could try to run away from it. We can try to fight it. We can try to ignore it. We can look at others and say, well, it's not that bad. We can compare. Or we can say, here is an opportunity for me to actually better understand myself, better understand my relationship with the Lord, better understand my relationship with the people in my life, and where can I root my identities in solid ground instead of my own abilities, which apparently are very lacking right now.
So I remember during this time, and maybe it was during this time, I don't know, I'm not exactly sure.
Stay-at-home dad time?
May have been.
We kind of like have marked our relationship by like that being a turning point in our life.
Yes.
So it was post-Gianna.
Yeah.
Year 4 through like 6 of marriage.
Was it? Okay.
Around there.
Maybe.
I worked for 2 school years. So
okay. No, but so I remember there was one time, so like during this time, I read through Dr. Bob Schutt's book, Be Healed. And he has a short exercise in it. Not exercise, like he's given an excerpt of a time that he was with seminarians, and he ran them through a short exercise that had them close their eyes and imagine they're at the Jordan River and they're being baptized. So it's not Jesus being baptized, it's them being baptized. So imagine Jesus, you're being baptized by John the Baptist, and you go under the water, and when you come up, you hear God the Father say, "This is my beloved Son with whom I'm well pleased." And remember, he kind of walked through them and then explained the whole idea of being a beloved son. And I just remember, and it's funny because like I heard that reading so many times before. Like it's not the first time I heard that. And I heard it, and I read it, and it really penetrated me, and it hit me in a way that it hadn't done before. And I was like, wow, that's me. And I remember it sticking out to me that God the Father says to everyone that he's well pleased with his son before Christ starts his ministry. Right. So like, it's not like Jesus had already done all the things and now I'm proud of him. But the fact that God the Father is proud of Christ and proud, but like I'm pleased with my son prior to anything happening. Like that really, I was like, I want to be loved like that. And then being like, oh, I am loved like that. Like I don't have to earn God's love. So that was something that hit me. And I remember telling you that and be like, and then looking at you deep in the eye and be like, do you realize you're a beloved daughter? And you looked at me like, huh?
Yeah.
And then I had you read through it and I'm like, does that mean anything to you? And you're just like, yeah, like you just very, very, and then you go on this retreat like 6 years later.
Yeah.
You go on this retreat and you come back to me like, Renzo, I'm a beloved daughter. And I'm like, yeah, I told you that 6 years ago. And you said nothing to me. You made me feel stupid. You remember this?
I do.
Yes.
Okay.
Nonsense.
So going back to our bashing our heads with youth ministry. And our college kids come back and they're like, can you believe this thing about the Mass or this thing about the Eucharist? And we're like, I said that to you 50, 100 times.
That's not a
number.
Not a number, math teacher.
I knew that was coming, but
I just remember saying that, and then you came back with like this epiphany. I'm like, yeah.
Well. I remember. So you read the book "Be Healed" by Dr. Bob Schutt.
Yes.
Right. So you're telling about this, and you were telling me about the imagery of root and fruit and the anatomy of a wound, and you shared all of that with me, right? And I was like,
I
great.
was there.
Like I'm really glad that your time as a stay-at-home dad is great. You have a lot of time for reading. I don't remember having this much time to read when I was a stay-at-home mom.
That's how I ignored the kids.
That's great. Good. You're reading. This is good. I was seeing change, right? So I'm teasing you now, but it was great. And a few years later, my book club, we read Be Healed, and I'm reading this, and I'm like devouring everything, and like I'm gonna change, and all these things, and really really getting the things that you were saying before. And in fairness, I did go to therapy after going back to work. I went to therapy and I had a wonderful therapist, and we worked through a lot. And then read Be Healed. So I think I was in a better place to like receive all this. When you're sharing it with me, it was like brick wall. Like, nope, I'm doing great as a teacher, and I'm a great working mom, and don't you dare, knock into this, because this is great. Everything's great. You're the one that needs to do all the work. You're the one that needs fixing around here. I'm fine. And so I think it was a lot of, that's great, honey. I love that you're reading.
That's amazing, because during that time, like, I think if people looked at our marriage, you could say that I objectively needed to fix stuff. Like, there was things that, like, you could look around the house and be like, he needs to do things, and like there's things he needs to work on. And I don't think they would have said the same about you, because like I think you
I played a good I'm a good actress. No, I really didn't even know it about myself, right? I was like, I'm working again. My identity was so rooted in being teacher at that time. So I was like, I'm back in my happy place. This is what I'm meant to do.
Now, what was the difference once you I think I want to talk about the retreat that the book is based on.
Okay. So this other book.
So there's two books that we want to highlight today. So Be Healed actually is one of them.
It's not actually one of the ones that we want to highlight. 3 books.
Do we have it somewhere? It's right there.
Is it?
It's right there. It's everywhere.
We have several copies of it.
You're shaking everything. This doesn't look great on YouTube. Not changing it. Or editing it.
This is true. We actually have a stack of these so we can give them to people.
Yeah. So this is one book, Be Healed.
I'm supposed to look up here.
So this is one book, Be Healed. I definitely will put it in the show notes. Definitely recommend checking it out. Yeah. In terms of just general healing, it definitely jump-started a lot of healing for us. That's led us to look at this. I just saw the notes. God, Father's love for us, the way he loved Jesus. Look at that. Look at that.
There it is.
There it is. Renzo could have wrote that 6 years before.
Okay, hush. This is my copy with all my notes in it.
Okay, so that's one book for healing. But in particular, in terms of the identities,
yes.
The 2 books that we want to highlight. One is what?
Undone by Carrie Schutz.
We're looking there.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. Undone by Carrie Schutz Daunt. So this is Dr. Bob Schutz's daughter wrote this book. Well, she collaborated actually with a lot of other authors, speakers, I don't know. Anyways, lots of different women. It's outlined by JP2's letter to women and the 4 identities that he shares for women, which obviously is rooted in our actual identities as daughter, sister, bride, and mother. So there's like 4 sections in the book, and each section has short stories written by different women.
Okay.
But it's called Undone because it's also inviting the intercession of Our Lady Mary, Undoer of Knots, into like helping us to undo the knots that have come into these different identities and impacted our relationships within those identities. Again, either by circumstance, by people towards us, or creating these knots ourselves, tying these knots ourselves, and doing that. So my girls group, my book club.
Look at you writing notes like a good student.
I know. Look at all my highlights and stuff.
But you guys did that book too.
We did this book too after Be Healed, and then we went on retreat. The Undone retreat came to Connecticut, so we went to that.
But before you jump into the retreat, the book that For gentlemen, we'll talk about it a little bit later.
You're supposed to look up there.
Oh, sorry. Well. So the book for gentlemen
I still look down here.
Because you're in your 30s. Born of Fire. It's by Father Innocent Montgomery, and it's being published by the Knights of Columbus. It's only $10. And this is a book similar. It's funny because I don't think he uses. Well, JP2 doesn't have a letter to men, which I'm a little frustrated about. Maybe. Never mind. Nope. But there needs to be a letter to men. And I think Letterman going through all the masculine identities would be great.
Yes.
But for the meantime, Father Innocent Montgomery has written a Lenten devotional actually for men, going through the different masculine identities. And one of the things I like about their spirituality, because if you listen to their podcast, the Poco Poco podcast, they go through like a reflection every week, and their spirituality, similar to like what I was saying to you when I was telling you like you're a beloved daughter, and you're like, meh. So like I remember listening to the podcast a couple of years ago, and it's just being like this is nothing to me.
Yeah.
And then I had to like go through the videos again while going through this, and some of the things they're saying, like they seem so simple.
You're just like,
and I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna cry at my desk. Like I can't. People are here, but like just
I needed that.
Like just like saying, like being able to talk about masculinity in a way that I need to heal in order to be a better husband, right? And it needs to be healed in order to be a better father. Because a lot of the things that, especially because we're raising 4 boys, so and the shows they put on for us. Yes, from today.
Funny. We had a dance performance today.
They decided to put a dance performance on today, and the outfits were fine. Everything was fine, but it could have been
they challenged your fatherhood.
They challenged my fatherhood, and it could have been a problem. But I've done so much healing work that it's okay. We're fine. But like a lot of the stuff that could be dysfunctional in how I perceive myself, how I perceive my masculinity, how I perceive myself as a son, and needing to earn things, because that could easily be just passed on to them.
Yes.
So that they feel like they need to earn my love, and they need to do, like, if they're not successful, I won't love them anymore. If they don't do certain things, I won't love them anymore. And I remember how much sin, how many times I was sinning because all I wanted to do was earn somebody's love, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it be my dad's or God's or, friends, or anything else. Like there's a lot of, if you don't know who you are, you're easily swayed one way or the other.
And it's amazing to me but the way that God has designed our life and the way that God has designed our, the process of life and where he has put us and in what relationships, that foundation of son has to be made.
That's like the first. It's got to happen first.
Right. And that's because that's the first one in your entire life.
Mm-hmm.
That has to be laid before you can be a brother well.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think a lot of us, because John Eldridge wrote Wild at Heart. The way I'm saying it to you is like, do you know Wild at Heart?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So it's a good book. It's another good book on masculinity. So in Wild at Heart, he talks about how every man, no matter what, is going to have a father wound. Though I feel like it's hard to speak like general, like not everyone.
Is that hard? You love to speak that way.
I can do that.
Is that hard?
I can do that. John Eldridge also does that. So I'm in good company. But so he says that like every man's gonna have a father wound. And I think for the most part that's correct. I know that there's a lot of good dads out there that maybe don't, that live out their fatherhood in a way that isn't gonna provide a wound like that. No matter
how hard
I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure the kids are gonna feel something.
Yes.
From me. But
because they need to run to their father.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, it's beautiful
you have to be an imperfect father so that they know what perfection is.
Right. So I feel like that's beautiful that even if that's true, that all boys are going to have a father wound, like how beautiful it is that like our relationship with God the Father begins as his sons. So that like and that has to be healed first in order to become brothers. Right. And so like, even if that's the case, like he's provided a way because in baptism we are adopted, and like that, even the idea of becoming adopted sons and then heirs to his kingdom, like that's something that I hope that our boys can appreciate as they get older. Like I don't want them to be like, oh, I don't know, like take their faith for granted and not really live in it. But that being healed was big for me, and being able to be a good dad and hopefully be a good dad and then husband to you. Mm-hmm. But I didn't get to go on a retreat for it. I know that you like you were saying, you went on a retreat with your friends to Undone.
Yes.
And how was that in because I remember you came back from that with, like, it wasn't like a huge, super powerful like teenage Steubenville retreat, but like you came back with very good insights into yourself and struggles.
What were some? Jeez, this is how life happens. Like, you don't even really remember them, and they feel so powerful, and I'm sure that they've had an effect on my life, but I don't remember a lot of the specifics, right? And this is kind of where we're talking about like the desire to be a speaker, to be well known, or to be famous, or to,
I have no desire for that anymore.
Right, but we used to, and because you felt like these people had such an influence on me, and I want to be someone that has an influence on others. Mm-hmm. And then now I don't remember what any Steubenville speaker said or what was actually said on this retreat. People might remember like a phrase, but it's a lot of what did you learn, and how did that influence your life, and how did that affect your life?
Well, that's the thing. Sorry, like back to like healing the identities. Like that's something that I realized that I might have a much bigger impact as a father. Right. Than I will as a speaker to anyone else. Right. Right. Like the kids will remember. Because for some reason, I remember everything wrong that I said. They remember all the things. Yeah. So that's the influence that I think, like, that I want to invest more in than anything else.
Yeah. I think what I just.
Well, could you speak specifically about, like, you talked about being a mother prior to being a stay-at-home mom and struggling with that. Like, could you speak to how the retreat helped you with that?
So a lot of the retreat is rooted in Dr. Bob Schutz's JP2 Healing Institute, his methodology of psychology and theology and putting them together. But what you had talked about was imagining yourself in the role of somebody else in Scripture. Mm-hmm. And so I think that has been something that I have now tried to put into practice, is that if I'm struggling with my identity as daughter or as sister, or even just as beloved by the Lord, by people around me, to put myself in Scripture, in the story, like interacting with Christ, interacting with Mary, interacting with God the Father. And what is that like to hear those words be spoken to me, and to imagine that, and to allow that to influence, that has influenced my prayer life in adoration and in Lectio Divina and reading Scripture, and just in prayer, and in times of struggling, or in times of, or even like celebration of, I feel like I'm doing this identity pretty well. I feel confident. I feel comfortable. I feel this identity the way it's supposed to be felt. I'm living this identity the way that it's supposed to be felt. That I imagine that being a conversation, that being an interaction with me and the Lord. So,
and how did that all change because like you're a stay-at-home mom now, and you've said before in other episodes, like, you're not feeling that restlessness anymore. Yeah. So like, how did all that, like, so coming full circle, what made that go away? How did the identities, like healing those identities, fix that?
Sure. Well, some days I'm just too busy to feel restless.
You're welcome.
I think that so much of it is just recognizing that what I'm doing, the actions that I'm doing, are not the end all be all. And the actions that I'm not doing, or my failures, they're not the end all be all, and they're not what defines our family. They're not what defines my identity. They're not what defines my relationship with my children. You're talking about stay-at-home mom in particular. So these times where it's just me and the kids, that how the day might be going listed on paper, or if somebody were to be, watching like a fly on the wall, that's not, that little snippet does not define our relationship, and it does not define our identities. And just surrendering my day to my vocation, right? My vocation is my path to holiness, and it is me who is living in this vocation. So therefore my identity is involved in this. I'm the one that's being invited to this, and to just surrender that. Like, here I am at your disposal, Lord. I do this for your glory. I'm trying, you know, and that at the end of all of that, you still love me. That I'm still loved. I'm still good.
And you feel like that took away the restlessness, or because you also are saying that you felt good at teaching, right? And you came back confident. So like do you feel like you're more confident now when you're parenting? Do you feel like it's not a matter of confidence anymore? Like what's the internal change that's different? Because I'm sure like there's other people listening that feel in similar boats, whether even if they're not staying home parents, but like they do a thing because it makes them feel good, but and without that thing they'd feel empty and feel like they have no purpose. Which all of those, that is a disordered way of putting things, because we should feel good with our identities as beloved.
Yeah. I think one thing that has been healing of that for me has been trying to instill that in my kids. Trying to show them that
that's good.
Not what they do that makes me love them. And in trying to do that, in order to do that well, I have to believe that, and I have to live that way too. So I think that has been transformative for me.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. So like, just to give people a better idea of like where the kids' ages are, like right now the oldest is turning 10 soon. And we got 10 and not turning 8, 6, 5, 3. And when you were a stay-at-home parent, or when you went to work last, I think our oldest was 4.
Yeah.
So like, I feel like it's a lot harder to because like if you have young kids, I think it's a lot harder to have to work on those things, because oldest being 4, like he doesn't really conceptualize that much. But like now that they're older, like you have to get that right, because like now they're doing things, they're doing sports, they have school, they have grades.
Right.
Like I'm so surprised that our oldest actually does not get. I'm sure he gets upset, he gets answers wrong, but like he got a B in something last year, and like he wasn't one of those kids that like was just like distraught that I didn't get all A's, and I thought he'd be one of those kids, right? And I commend you a lot, because like you're teaching him and you have no problem failing us, but so thank you for being like that. But like him being able to not feel like his grades are his identity, or his sports performance his identity, because he's very good at sports.
He is,
but he's not defined by them,
right?
Like so like even before his jiu-jitsu tournament, like I sat and talked to him, like, I love you no matter what. I don't care if you win. I want you to give your best, and I hope you get gold. But if you don't, I don't judge you by that. I love you very much. And he's like, fine. He's like, no, I know.
Yeah.
I'm still nervous. I was like, yeah, you're allowed to be nervous. Like, that's fine. Like, I don't judge you for being nervous. Like, you're allowed to be nervous, and trying to help them walk through that. But when they're 4, like, I don't know, they don't think that way. So it's harder to have to work that out yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe just less opportunities. I don't know. I think that's one of the big ones, though, is just because I believe that about my kids, I need to believe that about myself. So it's kind of amazing that you can, like, how hypocritical are you that you believe that about your kids, and then you doubt that for yourself. You doubt your own goodness, but you believe that of your children.
And if you don't believe that about your children, like, or I would like to push back. Not push back on you, but more of like, I'm sure there's people who no, I'd love my kid no matter what, but he has to get these grades, right? Like, I think that's something that I don't think my parents would have ever articulated and said, like, no, I don't love my son even if he doesn't do these things, but they still put like the taco story I told you about, like going to the doctor, like, why is he so chubby? Because you're feeding him too much. But like having standards and being like, no, I still love them, but like the way you articulate the standards.
And that's a wound. That's for sure a wound that I've had to.
You got the chubby wound too?
Prom dress shopping. Yes. We don't need to tell that story yet. But grades and achievements were certainly a priority in my family when I was growing up, for me at least. And so many lectures when grades were not at what was expected, and what about you was not capable of achieving that, and things like that. So there was a lot. I don't know. I think in identifying that there's a wound to be healed, then I can start to see how I can inflict a wound like that, and how I can attempt to not inflict that same wound maybe I'm bypassing and inflicting other wounds that I don't know about because I'm too busy trying not to do those wounds. But again, it's a lot of, I don't know, for me and I think in our relationship, it came from seeing how our dynamic was and realizing I'm not just restless within ourselves, but even our relationship is not a place of rest. Like our relationship is not a place of comfort, and something is disordered in our relationship. And by the grace of the sacrament, we just refuse to settle with that. And so sometimes for a while, it looked like fighting over chores. And a lot of times it looked like fighting over intimacy. And a lot of times it looked like fighting over weekend plans and who we're spending time with and our in-laws and all these things. These are surface level symptoms of a deeper, those are the fruit, as Dr. Brown talks, the bad fruit of a deeper root. And eventually we just kept trying to deal with the bad fruit, and it wasn't going away because the tree was still there. The tree was still planted. So I can't pinpoint like one thing that blew this all up for us, but we just really refused to accept that this is the way that marriage was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that we could still believe that these idealized things of marriage, these beautiful love stories, that there's something to those that has to be true.
Yeah.
And we just really wanted to believe that. And so we started down the path of healing. And I think that these 4 identities for men and women are so crucial to know about, to find ways that those identities have been attacked, to work on healing them. And I think that Lent is a really good time to spend because it's an extended period of time to really pause and sit in those identities. And do I believe that all of those identities are good in me? Are they all beloved?
Well, like you strip everything away and you go out to the desert to like kind of not see what you're made of, but like see what's really in there.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of us, we'd be surprised like how disordered our views are of our identities, of all the different identities within ourselves and the things that we actually find value in. So I actually think it would be cool. Like I wasn't really planning it this way, but like if for Lent, husbands and wives went through the identities together, but like in different ways. It's beautiful because so like Father Innocent's book, looking at this one, is a daily devotional, right? And it's some of its story, some of its reflections. It's a little bit different every day.
Sure.
And it goes through the identity. So like it goes through son first, then I think it's brother, and it goes through all the different ones. But the way it's written, I think, is written in a very masculine way. Because I feel like, if I remember correctly, Carrie's book is mostly all stories.
Yes.
Which is, again, I think is very beautiful. Because like I think for a lot of men, it'd be like, okay, tell me exactly what this identity looks like. How does identity pray?
Sure.
And like you can, and then from there, I can start unraveling my heart. Whereas like in there, it's stories and so it's seeing how it's done with other people.
That's right. So it's testimonies. It's testimonies of women and how their identity as daughter, sister, bride, mother have been disordered, and how they found healing in that identity. So it's a story to show, it's a real life story to show that point. And then it's got like some questions to help you think at the end of every story and scripture, and things like that. There's about 4, I would say, in every identity. So it could definitely
could
be
it
done.
Work for Lent?
I think so.
Oh, interesting.
Daily.
Well, so I think we're gonna challenge our listeners to do that. Another thing
and
that
talk to one another.
Yeah, and I think it's important because one of the great things about the podcast has been that people have gotten back to us and said this has started great conversations with us as a couple, and conversations are great, and that's why we're doing this. But it would be great if you could get to a point where you're speaking about spiritual things together and then also praying together.
Yeah.
So if say your husband is going through and learning about being a beloved son while the wife is going through learning about being a beloved daughter, and then you can talk about that together, and you can pray to God the Father together to grow in your belovedness as daughter and son. That's only going to make your marriage better. So I feel like that's a very interesting challenge that's come up.
Yes. And it's an invitation to speak truth and love into these other identities as well. And to notice that, like, oh, this is where my husband's strengths come in, because he really lives this identity wholeheartedly, or this is where some of his struggles and his sufferings come from, and vice versa. So I'm sorry, I'm just speaking from the wife's perspective, but it gives you more compassion and it gives you more understanding of, like, oh, this is where we as a couple can work and can pray for and can like do some of this healing work, because now I have a name for it and I have been able to narrow it down and pinpoint it out, and because in your marriage you are not alone in this, right? So this is obviously a personal identity, and it's unique because God created you unique, but also he has created you for vocation and created you for relationship. So you are not alone in this. So I think this would be a really cool Lenten marriage adventure.
All right.
I'm actually like excited because it's been a few years since I've read this, so I'm excited to go through it again.
Cool. So let's do it. And so let's not look this way. So, and same for you. Go ahead, and links will be in the show notes. And but thank you guys for being here. Thank you so much for listening to our show. We love your support. We love being able to see that people are still listening. My worth is not in the podcast, but it would hurt a little bit if people were like, we're done with them. It would just hurt, and then it'd be like, okay, this is no longer our season, Lord, I understand. But thank you for being here, and thank you for helping us. Even those of you listening on audio, thank you so much. Those of you watching on YouTube and helping us grow this channel, thank you so much. And anything else? What else do I say at the end?
I don't know, but go order these books. We'll put them, like he said, we'll put them in the show notes. They'll be from 2 different places because we just kind of put these together ourselves.
Yep. Because never mind. Yes.
Yep. And yeah, I just hope that this is good conversation starter for you and your spouse. If you feel like any of our episodes are good conversation starters, share them with your friends, share them with your loved ones so that they can have good conversation. And
like, comment, subscribe, leave 5-star reviews, do all of the things.
Not to help our identity, but to help these conversations be shared with.
This is the only reason I'm happy. Please. Sorry. My wife is the reason I'm happy. No, it's not. She's not even either.
That's not
it. It means nothing to me. She's nothing. Nothing.
Pendulum.
And we'll see you at the next episode.